What is up, guys? Welcome to the first official video in our series. I am sonofpeter, and in this video we'll be taking a look at simple data types, performing operations, and working with strings in Python. Now, data types are one of the building blocks in programming. Simply put, data types are basically the classification of different pieces of information. Now, we have a couple of different data types in Python, one of which includes the string data type. What a string is essentially a collection of characters wrapped around single or double quotation marks. What this means is basically that anything, just about anything, can be a string. We could have words as a string, we could have numbers as a string, and we could also have special characters as a string. As long as it is wrapped between single or double quotation marks, it is considered a string. In Python, the string is represented by the str function name, and that is how a string is identified. Now, another data type that we have is the integer or int data type. What the int is simply a whole number. If we have a whole number that is not wrapped inside of quotation marks, it is considered of the int type. A similar data type that we have is the float data type. Now, the difference between a float and the int data type is that a float has decimal values. So if a number has decimal values to it, then it is considered a float, and if it doesn't, it is considered an integer or an int. Another data type that we have in Python is the boolean data type. The boolean data type basically represents a truth or false value. If an operation or a value returns true or false, it is considered of the boolean data type, and we will get into that shortly. And finally, we have the none data type. Now, the none is not necessarily a data type but an object. However, it is important to mention this here. So a none is basically the representation of the absence of a value. For instance, if we were creating a variable and we hadn't given it a value yet, we could assign it the none, and it would be sort of like a placeholder for what we would then overwrite it later with. Now, naturally, the next thing we'll be looking at is our hello world program. Now, it is customary when learning a new language that the first thing we usually do is print out the words hello world. Now, Python has made that really easy for us by providing the simple function named print. And what we do is we write print and we wrap whatever it is that we want to output around brackets. So in this case, that is our string hello world. And if we save our file, we come to our terminal. How we run our program is by typing out Python or Python 3, depending on how many versions of Python you may have or your system, and followed by the name of the file that you wish to run. Now, in Windows, I'm not sure about other systems. When you install Python, it also comes with this little shortcut. You can just simply type in py and then followed by the name of the file, and it still works the same way. So press enter and we have printed our first program. Now, naturally, often we would like to perform math operations in our program. That has also been made easy in Python. I've prepared a couple of operations already, so I'm just going to paste them. And what we're going to do here is simply first print out the string representation of the equation, and then perform the equation, and then print out an empty line simply just by calling the print function with nothing in the brackets. So we have several operators in Python. As you can see, for addition we simply use the plus sign. subtraction, we use the subtraction sign. For multiplication, we use the asterisk or the star sign. I just want to run these quickly before we continue with the others and see what we get. So as you can see, the result is as expected. 5 plus 5 gives us 10. 10 minus 7 gives us 3. 3 times 3 gives us 9. Now we can also perform division in Python. Interestingly, in Python we have 3 different types of divisions. We have a simple division, which is done using a single forward slash. We have floor division, which is done using a double forward slash. And we have the modulo or the modulus division, which is done using a percentage sign or the modulus operator. And I'm going to demonstrate what exactly the difference between those are. So right off the bat, we can see that 5 divided by 2 using simple division gives us exactly what we expected, which is 2,5. However, when we use floor division, you get just the 2. You ask yourself what happened there. Well, when using floor division, what happens is your result is rounded down. So we get the quotient and we get rid of the remainder. And what the modulus operator does, or modulus division does, is the exact opposite of floor division. Instead of returning the quotient, all we do is return the remainder. And that is the difference between the 3 divisions. Now we also have a different operator. We can, for instance, we also have exponentiation, whereby we can print a certain number raised to the value of another. We can do that simply by putting up 2 stars instead of 1, and we can run our program and see what we get. We get 25 as expected. We can also make more elaborate math operations by using brackets. We can include addition in our sum. For instance, when we run that, we get 30. We can do subtraction, we can do division. Basically, anything you wish to do, you could do the same. Anything you wish to do on your calculator, you could do the same on Python. And you can make your operations as complex as they need to be, and it works just the same. Interestingly, we are also able to perform math calculations on strings. However, the only operator we can use is the multiplication sign. So for instance, we can say hello times 5, and what happens is we get hello printed out 5 times. Now we can also move the operator and the operands around, and we get the same result. But it is also important to note that, as I said, the only sign we can use is the asterisk or the multiplication when doing this type of thing. So for instance, if you wanted to do something like hello plus 5, which would be possible in something like JavaScript, what that would essentially do is return the string hello 5 like that. However, in Python, that isn't allowed. What you get back is instead a type error. Now, as you can see, it says type error can only concatenate string to string, not int. What this is essentially saying is that we cannot join the string data type with a int data type. But for instance, say maybe we did want to do that. Maybe for some reason we did want to print hello 5. How would we go about doing that? Well, we could do that by doing what is called typecasting. What typecasting is basically turning one data type into another data type, and we do that by using the function name of what we're trying to cast our value to, and then surrounding the value by brackets. So earlier I mentioned that a string is represented by the string function name. So we call string and we wrap the value within the brackets, and we save our file, and when we run it again we get hello 5 as expected. Now there are other ways that we can typecast. So earlier, for instance, we saw the simple division where we had 5 divided by 2, and that gave us 2,5, and that returned a float. What if we had something like 5 divided by 5? Now you'd expect that you would return 1, right? Our answer would be 1, which is correct. However, the data type returned is a float and not an integer. Whereas here it wouldn't be a problem, because if we wanted the true value of 2 divided by 5, we get what we expected is 2,5. However, if you wanted the integer type, a way we could go about fixing this is by typecasting. So we could call int around the operation, save it, and when we run it we get 1 as expected. So now our answer is of the integer type. Now next question is, what if we typecasted int on a value that returns a float type? What would happen in that case? What would happen then is that, or the interpreter would perform a floor division instead. So the number would be rounded down and we receive 2 instead of 2,5. And so that's basically how typecasting would work. Now we could typecast between the 3 different data types. We could typecast between the int type, the string type, and the float type. For instance, we could do something like if we had a string 5, we could convert that into an integer. And our 5 would be an integer. So if we removed this and we just printed out the string, a way we could check that is by running a type function, and it tells us that it is the string type, so class string. If we remove the quotation marks and we run it again, now we see that it is an int. So we can typecast to convert the values to fit whatever it is we are trying to do. Now here's a scenario. Let's say I was printing out I was working with a program. Let's say I was printing out a sentence like Son of Peter had a great fall. Okay, so say I was printing out a program, or I was working with a program that had reoccurring values in different places, and let's say I made a mistake. So I write this program and I realize, wait, it wasn't Son of Peter that sat on the wall, it was Humpty Dumpty. That would mean that I would manually have to go back to all of those instances and change it to Humpty Dumpty. And naturally, that would be a tedious operation to do, especially if like we had a lot more going on here. So a way we can get around that is by using what is called a variable. Now what a variable is basically a container that we can give a name, and then we can assign it a particular value. So in this instance, we can assign person the value Humpty Dumpty, and we can we can print out the variable and see that it has been now saved under the word person, or under the variable word person, variable name person. As you can see, we get Humpty Dumpty. So instead of now writing out these words one by one every time, what we could do is what is called concatenation, as we saw before. We can do something like this. We can say person plus, and you can remove this now. We can say set on the wall, we close the string here, and then say person again. Oops, I forgot the plus there. Person, and remove that, and then open the string, and another plus. Now there's an intentional mistake here that I will be explaining shortly. Here we go. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. So if you notice here, I guess it's less visible or less notable. Let me rather put it there. If you notice here, we don't have a space between Dumpty and had. That is because when we declared our Humpty Dumpty variable, it is a string. However, there is no space before and after the first and last word respectively. And in our string as well, there is no space between had and the beginning of the string. So what is happening, or how we need to fix that, is by adding the space either here or in the variable name. So preferably we do that here. That way we can keep track of what's happening, and we can also add it here, and we save it. And now our string is clean. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And so the benefits of using a variable is, if for instance a mistake was made with the variable name, we could easily change it here. Or maybe we don't, it wasn't a mistake, maybe we just want to change it up a little bit. We could say something like Mr. Dumpty instead of Humpty Dumpty. When we run that, all of the instances of Humpty Dumpty are now changed to Mr. Dumpty sat on the wall, Mr. Dumpty had a great fall. Now, what if I wanted to use a number with the string? Say we wanted to use a number, right? Let's change the string. Let's say something like the number little pigs. Let's say I wanted to print this out, for instance. This would return an error because the number and the string here are two different data types. As we see here, in number we saved the number 3. However, in the string here, everything else is a string. So if we ran this, we would get a type error. Now, how would we fix this? We could fix this by typecasting the number into a string, and that would essentially turn everything now in this print statement into a string. And when we run our program, we get the 3 little pigs. Now we could also then take the string and save it to a variable. We can call that book1. Now we can save the string into a variable, and when we print that out, as expected, the 3 little pigs. Now as we can see, this can become quite tedious. You know, you have to add the spaces plus type convert plus another space. This can become quite the tedious operation. So a way that we can actually go around this is we could do something like this. We could say we could remove these spaces and this and just add a comma like that. Remove the brackets, add another comma. We could easily run the program like this and we would get the 3 little pigs. So something to note is that when we add commas like this, we don't necessarily have to add spaces because it automatically adds a space. However, it is not advised to save something like this to a variable if, let me just write it out real quick. It's not advised to save something like this to a variable if you want an output like this, because this kind of declaration is actually a tuple declaration. We'll get into that a little bit later, but basically it won't give you the result that you expected if it is saved in a variable. As you can see, not what we expected. So you could do this if you just wanted to quickly print out the particular values, but if you were to save this to a variable, this is what you would get, and that's not what we want. So there is a different way to go about resolving this. We can do that by using what is called the Fstring. What a Fstring is basically a string prepended by the letter F, and in an Fstring we can use we can basically refer to any variable inside of the string, and it would be returned as part of the string and it would be automatically converted. So for example, we start writing the, and in order to refer to the variable outside, we need the curly brackets. We add the number inside, we say the number little pigs, okay, and then we call book2, save and run our program, and we get the 3 little pigs. So what happened here is when you use an Fstring and you call or refer to a variable, it automatically converts it to a string type. So we don't have to have the plus sign and the string and typecasting and all of that anymore. You just simply use your curly brackets and you add your variable inside the curly brackets. You print that out and there we have it, the 3 little pigs. Now here's a final concept that you may have noticed me doing a while in this video. You may have noticed that I keep doing like something like this. Basically what this is a comment. In Python, in fact in all of the languages, you will find the concept of comments. Comments are basically used to take note of what is happening in the program, or just to mute a line of code. So for instance, we have 2 types of comments. We have a single line comment where we can describe what is happening underneath. We could say let's say book title using typecasting, and that would be a single line comment, because as you can see, if we were to skip to a new line, it doesn't continue. However, we have a second type of comment that we can use, comment notation that we can use, and that is using three quotation marks before and after whatever it is that you want to comment, and then we can simply type out whatever it is. You say book title using formatted string, and we can go to a new line and say And there we have it. So what basically comments do is that you can have a comment in your code, um, and when you save your file and the interpreter runs your file, it'll read through your program and it'll see, okay, this is a variable, and it'll reach the lines like, oh no, this is a comment, I can ignore this. Gets to a new line, there's another variable, it sees, oh, there's another comment, it ignores it. Gets to another line, it reads it and the function, and it executes. So comments are essentially ignored by the interpreter, and comments are useful. You should actually get in the hang of using comments to leave notes either for like yourself or whoever will be reading your code in the future, so you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it is that you were doing before. And that is how we use comments. Now that we've learned all of that, we can apply it in our Hangman project. So if we were building a Hangman project, essentially what we would need is the word that we are looking to guess. So we could create a variable called word, and then we could save a word to it. For example, we could just save the word hangman. And then we'd also need our hangman image to be printed out. So we could have hangman hanging in the gallows. We could save the variable name as gallows, and then we can actually use this notation to create a multi-line string. So we could do this, and then we could create a string that spans across multiple lines. Now you may have noticed these blue backslashes. Now these are actually special characters in Python. Let me just come this side and quickly demonstrate what that actually implies. So let's say I wanted to print out a line, right? Let's say I wanted to print out a sentence like I'm learning. Right? And maybe I felt like that sentence was too long, so I changed the sentence and I wrote I'm learning. So a contracted version of I'm. And already we can see there's a problem. So what's happening here? Well, basically what's happening here is the IDE is picking up on this, but the interpreter would also pick up on this. It would say it would think that basically I'm ending the string here after the I, and maybe this would be a variable or something that I would be referring to, and then it would return an error. So even if I had added this at the end, it still remains a problem. So for instance, if I run it, you can see that already there's a syntax error. So this happens because the interpreter is treating this apostrophe here as a quotation mark and not an apostrophe. So if I wanted the interpreter to look at this as an apostrophe, what I could do is enter the backslash, and it would tell the interpreter to treat whatever follows as part of the string and not the quotation mark at the end. If I save that and run it again, now we can see that our string prints out correctly. Now the backslash can actually do a couple other things. We could use the backslash to create a new line, for instance. We could do something like what backslash n does is basically create a new line. The backslash is actually called the escape character, and what it's doing here is creating a new line. So the best way to demonstrate is actually just by printing it out so you can see for yourself. So as you can see, the lines are now separated, or the words are now separated by a new line. You have I, new line, am, new line, learning. You can do something else as well with the escape character. You also get the tab escape character. Instead of the N, you can use T, And when we save and run our program, we get I tab am tab learning. So there are different combinations of the escape character and a letter that you can look up and play around and try out for yourself. But now we're going to take a look at what is happening here. So in our Hangman project, we get this blue backslash, and what's happening is if we just left it like that, what would happen is it would essentially ignore the new line that we entered here when we pressed the enter key. So if we print that out, if we run this program, oh, okay, so we have to print that out first. If we save that and we run it, as you can see, our Hangman image is not what we expected. So like I said, why this happened is because the new line was ignored because of the escape character. Now a way we can get around that is by adding another escape character to escape the first escape character. And if we run the program again, we have our Hangman. But something I also noticed is that if you just add a space afterwards, you can get the same result. So by simply just adding a space after your backslash, you can escape the escape character in this instance. And now we have the groundwork for our Hangman project. So in the next video, amongst other things, we are going to be looking at getting the user's input and looking at going through the program a couple of times until the user guesses the word correctly or until they run out of lives. And on that note, if you like this video and you would like to support this channel, one way to do that would be to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Liking this video and sharing it will also help boost visibility. You can also leave your comments or questions and mention the type of content that you'd like to see in the future. Otherwise, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.